Good afternoon. Our first item of business today is portfolio questions, and our first question is from Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what plans or initiatives are in place to promote environmentally friendly modes of transport ahead of the 2020 UN Climate Change Summit in Glasgow.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Matheson.
Scottish Government officials are working with a range of partners to consider specific initiatives for sustainable transport ahead of the 2020 UN Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. Such measures will enable Scotland to showcase the significant work being done across the transport system to achieve the toughest emission reduction targets in the UK. More widely, COP26 being held in Scotland provides an opportunity to demonstrate our leadership in climate action, particularly since we were one of the first countries in the world to acknowledge the global climate emergency.
Rona Mackay.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Does the Minister agree that and I think you do, you've just said it, the Climate Change Summit in Glasgow next year is the ideal opportunity for the City of Glasgow and Scotland to show how much value we put on leading the way on reducing carbon emissions and to showcase our commitment to tackling the climate change crisis by providing environmentally friendly transport?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I do, Presiding Officer. It provides an opportunity for obviously the Scottish Government and Scottish Ministers to be fully involved in COP26. But of course, it's not just the very fact that it's taking place in Glasgow. We also have a very strong and ambitious story to tell of ourselves of the work we've been undertaking in taking forward world-leading climate change targets. Of course, Glasgow as a city is leading the way. They've already implemented a low-emission zone in the city centre, which is focused on buses, and will cover other modes of transport by 2020. And of course, we want to make sure that we continue to see that progress being taken forward as we move towards COP26. Additionally, the Scottish Government is also investing some £1 billion per year in public and sustainable transport to encourage mode shift, as well as providing some £13 million to public bodies to support investment in zero or ultra-low emission vehicles. And we're also investing some have invested some £30 million since 2021 to develop a comprehensive charging network for electric vehicles. I should also say to the member, we've also set out some very bold, ambitious measures within the programme for government, including a commitment to invest over £500 million in bus infrastructure, to decarbonise our railways by 2035, and also to provide an extra £17 million to support ultra-low emission vehicles. So I can assure the member we will use the COP26 as an opportunity to showcase the significant work which has been undertaken in Scotland to decarbonise our transport system.
Question number 2, Liam Kerr.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on North East Road infrastructure projects.
Cabinet Secretary.
This Government has committed over £800 million of investment in road infrastructure projects in the North East, including projects such as the Aberdeen Bypass, which opened in February, bringing immediate benefit to the area. Construction is also well underway in the Huddingham improvements, which is expected to open in spring 2021, and we are continuing to push forward with our plans for a new grade-separated junction at Lornskirk. I'm also pleased to confirm that our ambitious £3 billion programme to dual the A96 between Inverness and Aberdeen is progressing at pace.
Liam Kerr.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The capacity and limitations of the A90 near Dundee have been in the news recently, what with a lorry fire that shut it down, people driving down the wrong side of the road due to blockages, and a crane causing cracks in a flyover. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me, therefore, that the time has come for a new approach to the Kingsway to transform journeys up and down the East Coast? And if so, does the Cabinet Secretary propose an expressway or a relief road?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, any proposals would have to be brought forward through the regional transport network, including local authorities in partnership with colleagues in Transport Scotland. And any proposals for further road infrastructure investment in the area would be matters which would be considered within the STPR2 process.
Lewis MacDonald.
Thank you very much. The Cabinet Secretary is well aware of the very strong case made by A96 Action for online Inverurie as the least disruptive, least expensive and least environmentally damaging of the options for dualling that part of the A96, which he has mentioned. In view of what he has said today about showing leadership in climate action, should this option not now be added for consideration in the ongoing consultation process?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the member will be aware of the very significant amount of work has already been undertaken in assessing the various route options for the upgrading of the A96. Although I do recognise the points which the member has asserted, although I do not necessarily accept are contained in fact in terms of the assessments that have been undertaken on the various route options which are available. But I am aware that the A96 Action Group have a particular interest in this issue. What I can assure the member of is that there has been a very systematic, evidence-based approach undertaken to to identify what are the preferred routes for the upgrading of the A96. That continues to be the case. And the member will be aware that there has been considerable public engagement right across the route of the A96, with over 18,000 members of the public participating in that process in considering the various issues relating to the upgrading of the A96. But I can assure the member that we continue to always look at the various issues which are raised by communities. But I am of the view that the process which has been undertaken to date has been a thorough, detailed and evidence-based one in identifying what are the most appropriate routes for the future upgrade.
Question number 3, Stuart Stevenson.
To ask the Scottish Government what progress it has made on its commitment to help mitigate the damage to transport infrastructure caused by flooding in the North East and in particular the King Edward area in the Banffshire and Buchan Coast constituency.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the member will be aware that local authorities have a duty under the Roads Scotland Act 1984 to manage and to maintain local roads in their area, and duties under the Road Traffic Regulations Act 1984 to secure the expeditious and convenient and safe movement of traffic. However, in the aftermath of the flooding, my officials contacted Aberdeenshire Council to make an offer of mutual aid. I can advise the member that although this offer was acknowledged, it was not taken up by Aberdeenshire Council.
Stuart Stevenson.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer, which was slightly surprising. Will the Minister join me, however, in praising Volker Infrastructure and Benzies, local companies, which, among other businesses in the area, coordinated efforts to provide access via private roads, working with Aberdeenshire Council officials, which minimised the disruption from the flooding? And can the Minister say whether it's continuing to work with the Council on infrastructure issues arising from flooding? Cabinet
Secretary. I would like to join the member in thanking those local businesses and the local community for the proactive response that was initiated in the aftermath of the recent flooding. I can confirm to the member that we have also activated the Belwyn scheme. We did so on the 4th of October following a request from Aberdeenshire Council. The Belwyn scheme is a discretionary scheme which exists to give special financial assistance to local authorities who would otherwise face undue financial burden as a result of providing relief for carrying out immediate works due to large-scale emergencies such as flooding. As part of our continuing engagement with Aberdeenshire Council on this matter, I can assure the member that any claim which is received from the Council under the Belwyn scheme will be processed as timely as possible in order to support the Council in taking forward this work.
Question number 4, Gail Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assistance it gives to remote rural communities that depend on air services to connect to the rest of Scotland and beyond.
Cabinet Secretary.
We remain committed to continuing our support for HIAL and operating and funding the air discount scheme which benefits remote and rural communities. Our subsidy of HIAL means that airport charges are lower than they would otherwise be, which enables the operations of commercial air services. Our support for HIAL was over £28.2 million in 2018-19. Earlier this year, we also announced the continuation of the air discount scheme to the 31st of December 2020 and the extension of the geographical area of this scheme around Caithness, which is aimed to encourage further use of Wick Airport. We'll spend approximately £11.5 million on the air discount scheme in the course of this financial year.
Gail Ross.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. Given the recent negative changes to the Eastern Airways timetable and the potential for further changes to services operating to and from Wick John O'Groats Airport, Will the Scottish Government consider the introduction of a PSO from WIC before further failures to ensure the region remains connected to the rest of mainland Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, like the member, I was disappointed that Eastern Airways has decided to reduce frequency of the service in the Aberdeen route, but recognise that as any airline, they must make the best use of the assets that they have in the most efficient way. What I can say to the member, of course, Wick Airport continues to benefit from the air discount scheme and also the extension of it in the area in order to try and encourage people to make greater use of the airport. I've also, along with my officials, had constructive dialogue with the Caithness Chamber of Commerce and met with them during the summer, as have HIAL, and will continue to work with them to look at how we can best improve connectivity for the long term in the area. What I can say to the member that any consideration on the issue of a PSO is a matter which has got very strict regulations and rules around, which I've previously outlined in this chamber. But if there were any consideration to be given to a PSO, it is a matter which would have to be supported by multiple funding partners in order to put something of that nature in place. I'm always open to having dialogue on these matters, and I can assure the member that we'll continue to do what we can to help to maintain and improve air connectivity to Wick where that is feasible.
Rhoda Grant.
Will the Minister lift the pay settlement restrictions he's placed on Highlands and Islands airports in order to allow them to settle their current dispute with the air traffic controllers?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member may be aware that the public sector pay policy applies across all parts of the Highlands and Islands Airport. That's the policy which applies to all workers within Highlands and Islands. There are no exceptions to that, and ATC staff should be no different to any other members of staff that work for HIAL, and that's the arrangements which are in place and will continue to be put in place in dealing with these issues. And as I've previously stated, in terms of the claim which has been made by the ATS as trade union representatives, there has been no evidence to substantiate the nature of their claim, to make a claim which is significantly higher than that of any other HIAL staff. And on that basis, I do not believe that it is substantiated, and given a very significant offer that has already been made by HIAL to ATC staff, I would encourage them to work proactively with HIAL to get this matter resolved as quickly as possible and to recognise that what has been offered to them is a very generous offer in the present economic climate.
Question number 5, Alexander Burnett.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. And can I ask the Scottish Government what additional funding will be given to local authorities to support maintenance of essential transport infrastructure?
Cabinet Secretary.
The vast majority of funding to local authorities from the Scottish Government is provided via block grant, and we do not stipulate how local authorities should utilise their individual allocations. It's therefore the responsibility of each local authority to manage their own budget and to allocate the financial resources available to them on the basis of local need and priorities, having first fulfilled their statutory obligations and the jointly agreed set of national and local priorities.
Alexander Burnett.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? Now, residents in Dromoke and Durris are still facing huge issues with getting Park Bridge reopened. And this has left a community divided, leaving residents, school children, businesses and families all affected with no hope in sight. And they are now looking at crowdfunding in order to restore the bridge to traffic. Now, with a further 61 bridges and over 100 communities at risk following a council report, is this the state of Scotland under the SNP, with communities having to fundraise to keep their roads and bridges open?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, it is the state of the bridge under a Tory-controlled administration in Aberdeenshire Council, just to correct the member. And as the member will be aware that the road and the bridge is the responsibility of the local authority, and it is a bit rich for any Tory to come into this chamber and start demanding funding for public services, given the austerity which you have perpetrated on the people of Scotland over the last 10 years. You should be looking at yourself in the mirror and recognising the consequences of the financial decisions that were made by the UK Government, the Tory UK Government, to cut the Scottish Government's budget year on year. We have done everything we can to help to support local authorities, but I'm afraid it's his colleagues in Tory-led Aberdeenshire Council that are responsible for the bridge and for getting the bridge repaired.
Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister will be aware of the road network in Shetland and how essential it is for islanders' transport needs. The Minister will also be aware that the draft National Islands Plan recognises the importance of transport links for mobility and accessing services. My constituents in Sannes and Walls have highlighted that improvements are needed to rural roads in Shetland. So what support will come from the National Islands Plan to help Shetland Islands Council fund these necessary upgrades?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member will be aware that we've just completed the draft process of the National Transport Strategy. It sets out a range of measures which we'll take forward and help to improve transport connectivity across the country, including within our island communities. But the member will also be aware that roads which are the responsibility of a local authority are the responsibility for the local authority to undertake any actions or improvements which are necessary in order to improve connectivity within their own area. We will continue to do as we can in trying to minimise the impact that the UK Government's cuts are having on the Scottish Government's budget and helping to try to protect our local authorities, including within Shetland Council. But it is important that local authorities play their part in maintaining their local road network to an appropriate level.
Question number 6, Jamie Green.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to NFU Scotland's submission to Transport Scotland's consultations on Scotland's National Transport Strategy.
Cabinet Secretary.
We welcome the response from the National Farmers Union, along with all others received from individuals and organisations, and we're in the process of analysing responses to inform the final National Transport Strategy.
Jamie Green.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response? In their submission, which I've read, the NFUS were quite punchy in their criticism, stating that the current transport system poses inequitable and unique barriers on rural communities. It criticised weak transport connections, poorly maintained roads, and a transport system which does not put rural Scotland first. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, therefore, if he agrees with that analysis, and if events like this week's breakdown of MV Loch Seaforth fills our rural communities with any confidence that this government is delivering reliable services to them?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I too have read the NFU Scotland response, and actually it's generally supportive of the National Transport Strategy and the proposals which are set out within that, which I very much welcome. They, of course, raised a number of issues which they wish to have considered, which we'll, of course, give consideration to. The member may also recall that during the course of the passage of the Transport Bill and amendments which were pursued by Colin Smith in relation to considering the impact of the consultation process, that we will give consideration to the outcome from the consultation process being reflected in the final strategy and publish a document stating what we have done as a result of the responses which we have received. And that will include the range of areas which the National Farmers Union have given consideration to, including the rural first approach which they have highlighted in their submission.
Question number 7, Colin Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the proposed sale of Prestwick Airport.
Cabinet Secretary.
As the member is aware, an advert was published in the Official Journal of the European Union in June this year, inviting expressions of interest. The senior management team at the airport continue to consider bids that were received. Consideration of bids is a complex matter that requires detailed assessment and consideration. However, I can reassure the member that good progress continues to be made. To protect the integrity of the process and respect the wishes of the parties involved, there is clearly a need to maintain confidentiality. The Scottish Government will provide an update to Parliament at the appropriate time, while respecting the commercial aspects of the process.
Colin Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. On September the 10th, the Cabinet Secretary told Parliament that the management team at Prestwick had advised him that it intends to continue to work to the timescales as best it can. However, there is always a need to take into account any unforeseen matters. Now, given that the timescale stated that the 4th of October was the date that they aim to conclude the sale, can the Cabinet Secretary tell us what those unforeseen matters are that have caused the delays, when he expects the Government to be asked to agree a sale or otherwise, and whether he is confident that a sale is likely?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, as the member will aware, in the eligibility criteria or questionnaire, we set out what was the indicative timetable for taking forward this particular process. There has been a detailed process been undertaken by the management team, which has taken longer than being expected, in order to make sure that they evaluate the proposed bids in great detail, and if necessary to enter into discussions with those interested parties in order to explore those details to a greater level. And as part of the process which the management team are undertaking at this stage. But I can assure the member that I will update Parliament with as much information as I can once we are in a position to do so. What I won't do, though, is I won't compromise the existing confidential process which has been undertaken by the management team and interested parties in taking this issue forward. I'm sure the member would recognise that it's in everyone's interest to ensure that the integrity of that process is maintained and is respected as this process is undertaken.
Thank you, and that concludes transport. Oh, point of order, Richard Lyle.
Presiding Officer, can I put forward this observation? If we'd not had so many supplementaries on the question, not on the question paper, I would have been able to ask my question, which was very important to my constituents. Just an observation, Presiding Officer.
I'm conscious, Mr. Lyle. I was very conscious of trying to get to your question there, but unfortunately we only took 3 supplementaries, but sometimes the length of the question, the number of supplementaries and the length of the answer conspires against members lower down the order paper. If the member wishes to press his request to speak button at another part of in the parliamentary week, for example FMQs, I can assure him I would be minded to accept a question from him. Turning to Justice and Law Officers, question number 1, Donald Cameron.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how many police stations have been sold or had their lease terminated since Police Scotland was established.
Cabinet Secretary Humza Yousaf.
Responsibility for the management of the police estate sits with the Scottish Police Authority and rightly with the Chief Constable. However, Police Scotland has confirmed that 113 police stations have been sold, 17 police stations have had their lease terminated since the creation of Police Scotland in April 2013. Some of these properties and lease terminations were declared surplus by legacy forces, with the sales concluding after the establishment of Police Scotland. The new estate strategy approved by the SPA in May 2019 provides a framework for planning the future of the police estate to support the long-term vision of policing, which includes enhanced partnership working and seeks to respond to the changing needs of communities while maintaining public visibility and confidence.
Donald Cameron.
Presiding Officer, the Present Journal reported last week that a total of 125 stations have been axed since the SNP merged local constabularies into Police Scotland. That includes 32 in the region I represent, the Highlands and Islands. Violent crime has risen for 4 years in a row. Why is the Scottish Government dismantling local policing in remote communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I just give a comparative figure, of course, that the House of Commons library briefing that I've looked at suggests that 600 police stations in England and Wales have been closed under the Conservative Party government. So if he thinks that that is having a detrimental effect in Scotland, I'm sure he'll be equally in condemnation of his own party's actions in England and Wales. But of course he won't, because what he's making is a political point, not based on any fact. But what I would say to him is he's seriously asking the government and Police Scotland to keep open stations that haven't been used for years. Take the region that he represents. In Broadford, there's been an empty station since 2013, been closed. Empty station in Betty Hill, 2010, not been used since then. In Invergordon, a station that's been empty since 2011. Is he seriously suggesting that the Police Scotland keep those stations that haven't been used for years open at a cost to the public taxpayer, a cost to Police Scotland? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to do that. So I'm very proud of our record in terms of lowering crime rates. We have one of the lowest crime rates in 43 years. We have 1,000 additional police officers since this government party took over in 2007. We have given police, of course, a historic pay deal described as the best pay deal in 2 decades. So I'm very proud of our record. I would suggest to him that if he wants to make a valuable contribution, what he could do is persuade his colleagues in Westminster to return the £175 million in VAT that they stole off police and Fire Scotland.
James Kelly.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The discussion about police stations highlights the issue of the £43 million shortfall in the capital budget, as evidenced by the Police Scotland submission to the Justice Subcommittee on Policing. Indeed, Deputy Chief Officer David Page described the effect of the capital budget as putting band-aids on the issues that need to be dealt with. So does the Cabinet Secretary accept that the shortfall of 43 million undermines the ability of Police Scotland to effectively manage the police estate, ensure that there's effective IT facilities in place, and also that the fleet management is modern and up to date?
Cabinet Secretary.
Where I will agree with James Kelly is that, of course, the capital budget is hugely important. It's important that we keep that under review. It's important we listen to what Police Scotland have to say around the capital budget. That's why I, as Cabinet Secretary for Justice, when I was approached before the last spending review by Police Scotland and by the SPA about increasing the capital budget for mobile devices, I increased it by 52%. Now, I just say just gently to James Kelly, in his previous role as Finance Secretary, he did not vote for this budget which increased the capital budget. But also, of course, he didn't bring a proposal to the table to increase Police Scotland's capital budget. So, yes, I'll listen to what Police Scotland have to say. Of course, the spending review will be a matter of much debate and negotiation. I hope that if there is an increase, a further increase to the capital budget of Police Scotland, then the Labour Party will support those budget proposals.
Question number 2, John Mason.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on whether moving towards a two-verdict justice system of proven and not proven would be an improvement on the present system.
Cabinet Secretary Hamza Youssef.
Understanding the impact of the three-verdict system was one of the key purposes of commissioning the recently published jury research. And now that we have these findings, the Scottish Government will engage in extensive discussions with interested parties across the country and what this may mean for future criminal justice reforms in this area. This will include whether we should move to a two-verdict system, and if so, what those two verdicts should be. I have a genuinely open mind on what, if any, further changes may be required. I will not prejudge the outcome of those conversations.
John Mason.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply, and I wonder if he would agree with me that the task of a jury is not to uncover an ultimate truth, but rather to pass opinion on a presentation of evidence, and that it's much more logical to end up with a position of proven or not proven rather than not guilty.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'll leave the debates on legal philosophy and debates around kind of legal jurisprudence to perhaps the colleagues on my right and to my extreme left here, and I say extreme left in terms of positioning as opposed to making any comment at all on any politics. But what I would say to John Mason, it's really, really important that we view this discussion around jury research and potential changes to the jury system through the prism of what is best in the interest of justice. And what was clear from the jury research, at least from a qualitative basis, but also I think from a quantitative basis, but certainly from a qualitative basis, was that there was some element of confusion among some jurors in and around, for example, the three-verdict system. So we saw examples where jurors were saying that they thought after a not proven verdict somebody could be retried, and so on and so forth. So there was some confusion around the three-verdict system, and I understand there's a very passionate debate around those who wish to see a reform of the three-verdict system to a two-verdict system, and of course what those two verdicts should be. So I don't prejudge that. The first of the engagement conversations takes place later this month, and they will include a range of stakeholders, and then of course I'll come to the Parliament to update Parliament on what I think is the way forward.
And Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think the Cabinet Secretary might have just answered my question right at the end of his contribution, but basically the Scottish Jury Research report that he mentioned, he said when it came out he would engage with legal professionals and the wider public. So will he provide a quick update on that engagement?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, happy to do that. My officials have already begun the kind of initial planning discussions with Rape Crisis Scotland and the Law Society. They'll be contacting more organisations in the coming week. The first of those engagement sessions will be held in Glasgow. It's next month, sorry, not the end of this month. It'll be next month. And I consider it important that a number of these events are held out with the Central Belt as well, to get a wide view as possible from people. I think it'll be really essentially important that we all engage, for those that have an interest in this issue, in a manner that is sensitive to the issues that are being discussed. But also I would welcome any members of the opposition, or indeed of my own party, that have an interest in this. It's really important that we engage with all sides of the debate, and that's what the government will look to do. And I'm very pleased that we have a range of stakeholders, from the Faculty of Advocates, the Law Society, to Rape Crisis Scotland and many others, very keen to engage in what the next stage of the reforms should be.
Question number 3, Tom Arthur.
Ask the Scottish Government how the new Fireworks Review Group, announced as part of the Fireworks Action Plan, will ensure that the interests of veterans are represented.
Minister Ashton.
Through the public fireworks consultation, I heard evidence that the use of fireworks can be difficult for some of our armed forces veterans, and that the loud noises, strong smells from fireworks can cause considerable anguish. Membership of the Firework Review Group is currently being finalised, and it will be drawn from key organisations and stakeholders. And I will ensure that veterans' organisations are engaged and the voices of veterans are heard as the work is progressed to consider the future of fireworks in Scotland.
Tom Arthur.
Can I thank the Minister for that response and welcome her commitment to ensure that the voices of veterans are heard. Last week I was contacted by constituents who want to see a ban on the public sale of fireworks. People in Renfrewshire South, many of them are telling me that they want to see an end to the unnecessary stress caused to friends, family, neighbours and pets by inconsiderate individuals who, despite repeated public information campaigns, continue to use fireworks irresponsibly. Does the Minister agree with me that if the UK Government is not willing to take action on this matter, powers need to be devolved to this Parliament so that we can?
Minister.
I do, and I would reassure the member that I am also receiving much constituency casework, also calling for a ban on the sale of fireworks in much the same way that the members illustrated there. I have written to the UK Government regularly over the last year and ensured that they have been engaged with the process that we are carrying out here in Scotland on the consultation, the outcomes of the consultation. But it is quite disappointing that the current UK Government have made clear that they've got little appetite to change the legislation surrounding the sale of fireworks. The recently published House of Commons Petition Committee report clearly states that the UK Government has failed to act in response to legitimate concerns expressed about fireworks, and the report sets out a number of recommendations with specified timescales as well. And I would hope that the UK Government will take forward action in that regard. If this head in the sand approach to the sale of fireworks is to be maintained by the next UK Government administration, I would certainly welcome the opportunity to discuss how the relevant powers over the sale of fireworks could be devolved to Scotland. And this would allow us to lead from the front on this issue and introduce the change that the people of Scotland have made clear to me that they want to see.
Bill Bowman.
Returning to veterans, there are issues around fireworks and animals, and many veterans have companion dogs. Can the Minister assure us that the review group will take full cognizance of this aspect and that the special needs of veterans and their companion dogs will be addressed?
Minister.
Yes, I thank the member for raising this issue. It certainly was a theme that came through in the consultation. I'm very aware that there are a number of groups, so veterans being one of them, people with underlying mental health concerns, people who have pets themselves, suffering a great deal from fireworks misuse and even from appropriate use of fireworks just through the noise and the length of time that can carry on from. So as I said in my answer to Tom Arthur, membership of the review group is currently being finalised. I'm not able to say exactly at the moment the precise membership of it, but it will be drawn from key stakeholders, and I assure the member that veterans' organisations will be fully engaged in this, and I will make sure that their voices are heard as we progress through this process.
Thank you. Question 4, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it last met British Transport Police to discuss safety on trains. Staff safety on trains.
Officials are in daily contact with British Transport Police through the embedded liaison officer within Transport Scotland. This provides first-hand instant information and actions relating to all rail and British Transport Police issues, including incidents involving rail staff, as well as an opportunity to provide input from a Scottish Government perspective. I last met with British Transport Police earlier this year at the British Transport Federation Conference. Transport Scotland and British Transport Police also attend the quarterly Rail Workplace Violence Stakeholders Forum, where staff safety is, of course, a key focus.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. But does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that the ultimate responsibility for ScotRail staff lies with ScotRail management, and that they, in conjunction with the British Transport Police, need to do more to actually protect their staff?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I do agree with that. The member will be aware, of course, I was a previous Transport Minister and would have constant and regular conversations with the ScotRail management on this issue, and I know certainly from my time, and I suspect it's much the same now, that they take this issue extremely seriously indeed. That's why ScotRail play a leading role in the reduction of violence against rail workers forum. That includes the British Transport Police, trade unions and Transport Scotland. This forum develops and implements short, medium and long-term strategies to reduce physical and verbal assaults and antisocial behaviour towards rail staff and passengers. Now, importantly, there's been a reduction of 20% in assaults against staff in Scotland this year. That's compared to an increase in England and Wales. So ScotRail and British Transport Police will continue to work closely with stakeholders on initiatives to prevent violence and aggression towards staff and report findings to the Scottish Railways Policing Committee for scrutiny and review.
Question number 5, Alistair Allen.
To ask the Scottish Government what plans it has to review the conditions for firearms certificates.
Cabinet Secretary.
The conditions for firearms certificates are an operational matter for Police Scotland under legislation which is reserved to the UK Government.
Alistair Allen.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response, and I'm very supportive of the firearms restrictions which exist in this country. He will be aware of the exceptional circumstances of veterinary surgeons which the law does recognise. Does he believe that the current restriction on the handguns used by vets to euthanise large and often aggressive animals to a capacity of 2 shots is sufficient to guarantee the safety of vets who are often asked to carry out this task in remote areas with very limited facilities for animal restraint?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank Alistair Allen for his question on behalf of his constituents, and also say that I am very aware of the unique circumstances on islands, again in a previous role, understanding those unique circumstances, and I often see those unique circumstances on my travel to our island communities. So I do recognise the very unique characteristics, the very unique circumstances that a veterinary practitioner may well have and a veterinary surgeon may well have on an island community. What I would say is these can be sometimes difficult factors that need to be balanced. We must, of course, have at the forefront of our mind the need to protect public safety, but also the important element of if an animal does need to be euthanised, then doing that in a humane way. And the principle is that humane dispatch handguns should only be able to fire 1 or 2 shots before reloading. That is well established in reserve legislation and guidance, and it's also widely supported by police and shooting organisations. There is useful guidance in emergency killing of animals using firearms from the Humane Slaughter Association on their website, including for agitated animals. This guidance is recommended by the Scottish Government's senior veterinary advisors. The Human Slaughter Association advises that handguns should only ever be used if a kill can be achieved with a single clean shot. If it's not possible to approach an animal safely, then another weapon such as a rifle or shotgun may be appropriate. So I recognise what Alistair Allen says in terms of a lack of potentially restraint equipment on an island. So perhaps I can advise that his constituents should consult that guidance, and if required, contact the HSA for further advice alongside ongoing liaison with Police Scotland regarding his firearm. It may be the case that a different firearm may be required for his particular unique circumstances.
Question number 6, Monica Lennon.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it is satisfied with the waiting times for post-mortem reports.
Lord Advocate James Wolfe.
In cases of sudden or unexpected death, a post-mortem examination may be necessary to establish the cause of death. Where toxicological analysis is required, the final post-mortem report cannot be issued until that has been completed. The Crown has been experiencing delays in the provision of toxicology reports, and in these cases that will affect the timescale for provision of final post-mortem reports. These delays will rarely prevent or delay the release of the deceased body to next of kin or nearest relatives. However, I appreciate the impact which a delay in establishing the cause of death can have for bereaved relatives. Officials in the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service have been meeting with pathology and toxicology leads to discuss workloads and capacity and have agreed a system of prioritisation of workload. And they will keep bereaved relatives advised in accordance with the service's commitments in the Family Liaison Charter.
Monica Lennon.
I thank the Lord Advocate for that answer. It is disappointing to hear that contractual issues between the Crown Office and Glasgow University are delaying post-mortem reports. I'm also pleased that he agrees that these delays are unacceptable, and I hope he'll apologise to the families affected. Will he write to me with detailed information about the backlog and waiting times for pathology and toxicological reports, and outline what action is being taken to address these matters?
Lord Advocate.
Yes, I very much appreciate Monica Lennon's continuing interest in this subject, and I'm very happy to confirm that I will be writing to her shortly about these matters. As she's aware, Glasgow University has intimated that it no longer wishes to provide these services in the longer term. The Crown is in discussions with an alternative provider. I'm pleased that Glasgow University has indicated that it will maintain the existing contract in place until the end of September next year to allow for the transition to a new provider to take place. And I may say that my officials meet regularly with staff at Glasgow University both to discuss workloads and performance, and they've specifically had a meeting to discuss the proposed the plans in relation to the future provision of this service with the staff. I certainly regret the impact that these delays have on any bereaved relative, and I'm very happy to reiterate my confirmation that I will write to Monica Lennon in detail on the matter.
Thank you. Question number 7, Linda Fabiani.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it monitors the issuing of non-harassment orders by sheriffs under the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act 2018.
Cabinet Secretary Humphreys.
The 2018 Act makes it mandatory for the court to consider in every case whether to impose a non-harassment order to protect the victim. The 2018 Act also provides where an NHO is not made, the court is required to explain the basis for that decision. There is a statutory reporting requirement in the 2018 Act, which requires the Scottish Ministers to publish a report on the operation of the Act 3 years after commencement. This will include information on the number of non-harassment orders made by courts in domestic abuse cases.
Linda Fabiani.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer and for the reinforcement of the requirements of that Act. I have heard reports that there may well be a reluctance in courts to issue NHOs, so can the Justice Secretary please consider some way of monitoring this before the 3-year statutory requirement?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I can give that reassurance to Linda Fabiani, and I should put on record, I know when the Act was going through, her absolute determination in order to protect victims of domestic abuse through the work that she has done to get the Act into the place that it's at the moment. What I would say to Linda Fabiani is I will look at the figures for the year that, or for the period of time, sorry, that the Act has been in operation since April. And I will, if there are discrepancies or issues that give me cause for concern, I will raise them with the judiciary. She will understand, of course, the point I'm about to make, which is, of course, these are matters that are independent of government for the independent judiciary to decide upon. But I will happily look at the figures since the Act has been in operation, and I'm happy to also keep Linda Fabiani on that, updated on that if I have any particular concerns.
Thank you very much. And that concludes portfolio questions. We're going to move on now to the next item of business, which is a debate on motion 19822 in the name of Kate Forbes on artificial intelligence and data-driven technologies, opportunities for the Scottish economy and society.